Christianity only became an official Roman religion only in 380 AD. Now, this is a couple of years after Christianity was adopted in countries like Ethiopia and countries like Nubia. Africa actually adopted Christianity and made it official before the Roman Empire actually did. But a lot of people these days will say Christianity originates from Rome, or it was Constantine that invented Christianity. And I think for a lot of these people, it's not so much about bringing people to spiritual knowledge of God, but it's actually racial identity politics. It's more about saying that actually we are Africans and therefore this is our belief. And basically, a lot of them are responding to white supremacy. And so, in responding to white supremacy, if the religion of white people is Christianity, therefore it's convenient then to tell people, no, we shouldn't believe in Christianity, we should believe in our own spirituality. But the problem when we respond to divine matters, we're not responding to what people have done, but we're responding to what God has done. And we look at the evidence for the existence of God, and then we make a response by worshiping God. And so we can't apply political or racial politics in the spiritual matters, because sometimes actually you'll say, well, white people worship this, I'm going to worship this. But the problem is there's also African spiritual practices that you cannot adopt. For an example, the Maasai we just learned recently, and if you haven't watched the video that we did with Pastor Ebenezer Afolabi, I'll encourage you to watch it and I'll put it in the description box for you to look. But basically, the Maasai don't believe in life after death. So if you believe in African spirituality, then embrace the Maasai belief that there is no life after death, there is no ancestors. Will you embrace it just because it's African? That's the point I'm trying to make, is that people make African spirituality to be some form of a monolithic belief, as if everybody in Africa has the same belief, but absolutely not. And so we still have to evaluate each belief. And each nation always had their own belief. And so you got to evaluate which belief you believe that you actually hold on to, because they're not all the same. So in this video, we're going to be hearing a new conspiracy about Rome and Christianity. And in this conspiracy, it's not Constantine who is said to have invented Christianity, because Abba Ayalew knows there's so much evidence for the existence of Christianity way before the coming of Constantine. And so what he does is he pushes the conspiracy to Emperor Vespasian, who's much earlier than Constantine. And then he's going to say that the Flavian dynasty actually invented Christianity. So in this video, we're going to be looking at that conspiracy. And this is a channel that seeks to clarify modern misconceptions about Christianity. So we welcome you to Bisrat. And if you're here for the first time, we want to encourage you to subscribe. We want to encourage you to like our videos. And if you know other people who might be interested in the videos that we're putting out, we want to encourage you to share it with them. So let's get into our video.
This is popular opinion, and we are on unpopular opinion.
Yes,
let's give the unpopular opinion now. Amongst the three religions, Christianity is the first. Older than Judaism, older than Islam. Now you are going to ask me, Mkulu,
how are you saying the son is older than its father?
How is Moses now younger than Jesus? It's madness.
This is the mystery of Melchizedek.
All right.
Getting deeper.
This is how it goes.
I just want to, before he gets into his conspiracy, just want to state that there is a ton of evidence also for Judaism being older than Christianity. There's evidence that the people of Israel are older than Christians. And there's an emperor, not an emperor, but there's a king in Egypt called Meneptah. And Meneptah actually wrote about the Israelites. So this is information outside of the Bible, because a lot of people are saying they don't rely on the Bible. So we can make a case for our beliefs outside of the Bible. But Meneptah wrote about the children of Israel about 1,400 years before the coming of Christianity. And he listed the different kingdoms that he actually conquered. One of those kingdoms was the kingdom of Canaan. But also he lists that Israel is laid to waste. So Israel is one of the places that he destroyed. But also, if you go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll also see that the documents that we call the Old Testament are quite clearly verified by historical evidence that they are independent of the New Testament and they are much older. And so the writings of Moses are much older than the New Testament. And we see Moses being written of in those documents. So clearly, I mean, you can't say Jesus is older than Moses. But also, there's another form of evidence that we can use 130 years before the coming of Christianity, when the Romans began to invade Israel. There was a rebellion or a revolt that was led by a guy called Simon Bar Kokhba. And Simon was actually believed to be the Messiah by the Jews of his time. It also proves to us that there was a messianic expectation because the people of his time actually expected or thought he was the Messiah. But in one of his letters, he writes about Judea, he writes about Judaism, he writes about the children of Israel, and so on, showing us that there were people who believed in the existence of a Messiah. And so when Jesus comes 130 years after, there's already a messianic expectation, which has nothing to do with Rome. But let's carry on.
Christianity was created by a family, the Flavian Dynasty. Now, the Flavian Dynasty, the first emperor of the Flavian Dynasty who took after the Augustus Caesar's dynasty, after Emperor Nero destroyed the royal funds.
Yes.
And then he was, after Nero, he was dethroned, deposed.
You're speaking about Romans.
Roman history now.
Okay, again, he's also already making a big mistake. You've got Emperor Nero, and then he's saying then after that it was Vespasian, who then obviously was the one who created the Vespasian dynasty, and his son was Titus, and then Domitian. So there's evidence even before Vespasian took over and became emperor that even under Nero there were Christians, and Nero persecuted the Christians. In fact, he created a fire in Rome and then blamed the Christians for it. You can look it up on the writings of Tacitus. And Tacitus actually explains in those writings that there was a man called Jesus, and there were people who named themselves after this person called Jesus, and he lived during the time of Tiberius. So Tacitus pushes him way before Nero and pushes him right where the New Testament actually says Jesus is, during the time of Caesar Augustus. And he even goes on to say that it was during the time of Pontius Pilate, the same thing that the New Testament is saying. And so this is information outside of the Bible confirming the truthfulness of the narrative of the Bible. Another thing to note is that Tacitus is somebody who's hostile towards Christianity. He calls Christianity a superstition. So this is somebody who believes in Roman beliefs, but he's also confirming that actually Christianity is much older than the dynasty of Vespasian. It's much older than Nero, and he puts it as originating during the time of Caesar Augustus.
But you're talking about Christianity being created by people who came later into it.
But
are you not? You're saying Christianity.
This is the popular opinion.
Oh, okay.
I did declare what I'm going to say the unpopular opinion.
So there you have it, guys. That was the unpopular opinion. So again, going back to the notion, because a lot of people keep throwing this Rome conspiracy. And the one important thing you need to understand about the Roman Empire, they are never going to leave their own traditions and adopt or create a belief system that actually is a belief system of their subjects. In other words, it's like the colonizers coming to Africa and then saying, oh, Shaka Zulu, he's the son of God, let's all worship him. Why would they have to do that? Because these are their subjects. They see themselves as superior to these people. Why would they just create this person that doesn't even come from their country? Remember, Rome had their own beliefs. And this is confirmed if you look at the letter that was written to Emperor Trajan by Pliny the Young. Now, Pliny the Young was a Roman governor in the province where we have today modern-day Turkey. And what he was asking, Pliny wrote a letter to the emperor asking, what should I do with the Christians in my place, in my area? There are a lot of them. They don't practice Roman beliefs. And what should I do with them? There's so many in numbers. And so the emperor wrote back to him and actually said, don't follow them. Don't go looking out for them. But where they are accused and they're brought before you, then you can actually persecute them. And then he goes on to say, those that actually decide to recant their Christian beliefs and adopt the belief in the gods. You see, there's evidence there that the Romans believed in the gods. The idea of monotheism is not found anywhere in their beliefs. In fact, they also had the belief in the cult of the emperor. They worshipped the emperor. They said Caesar is Lord. And so Christians were saying Jesus is Lord. And a lot of them were thrown into the fire. They were persecuted. They were crucified. A lot of the early church fathers actually were willing to die for their faith. And we see this even with African church fathers that come a little bit later, like Tertullian, who says the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. And what Tertullian was saying is that the Romans crucified Christ, obviously, because the Jews wanted him crucified. But nonetheless, still, it was the Romans that crucified Christ. And when they crucified Christ, they thought they were crushing Christianity. But after Christ died and rose again, we see the apostles being willing to die for their faith. And a lot of them are said to have been crucified or died under Emperor Nero, who is the one who blamed Christians for the fire that took place in Rome. But a lot of the apostles actually didn't want to get crucified the same way that Christ was crucified. They were willing to be crucified upside down. And so the Roman persecution of Christianity is one of the evidences that shows us that Christianity could not have originated from Rome. But the willingness of the early church fathers to actually stand up for their faith, even in the face of Roman opposition. And this is why Tertullian is saying every time they try to crush us, they didn't know actually that this is when Christianity begins to grow. And we see the Roman Empire actually bending its knee to Christianity. In 313, we see the Edict of Milan, where Christianity is now allowed to practice, or Christians are allowed to practice their beliefs in the Roman Empire. And then only later, 380 AD, this is after countries like Ethiopia had already adopted Christianity. This is after countries like Nubia had already adopted Christianity. Now you got to ask yourself, why does Rome adopt it so late if they actually invented this belief system? And so the conspiracy to say that Emperor Vespasian created Christianity, the evidence suggests that they actually persecuted Christians. His son Domitian actually persecuted Christians. His son Titus is the one that destroyed the temple. Why would he invent something and then destroy it and then persecute it and then kill the people that actually practiced this belief that you invented in the first place? So there's no historical basis for anyone to adopt this conspiracy.